Hey, y'all, guess what? You can now order transcripts of any interview I've done for the incredibly reasonable price of $2.50 each. Listen, finding a good transcriptionist is near impossible, but I've got one now. Just go to scotthorton.org/transcripts, enter the name and date of the interview you want written up, click the PayPal button, and I'll have it in your email in 72 hours max. You don't need a PayPal account to do this. Man, I'm really going to have to learn how to talk more good. That's scotthorton.org/transcripts. All right, you guys, welcome back. I'm Scott Horton. It's my show, Scott Horton Show. All right, our next guest today is Keegan Stephan. You can find him at Keegan.nyc. I didn't know that was a thing. Keegan.nyc. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing real good. Appreciate you joining us today. And I also want to direct everybody over to Keegan's Twitter feed, where he tweets twitter.com/KeeganNYC. KeeganNYC. And you should do a great job of keeping track of police violence against American civilians here. I've been following you for, I don't know, I guess about a year or so. And you're always very helpful in keeping me up to date, although I can't really claim I'm up to date. As I can possibly be. But I think there's just almost no keeping track of the amount of innocent people shot down by cops in this country. But anyway, I appreciate you joining us to try to cover them as best we can.
No problem. Glad to be here.
All right, so tell me, who's Natasha McKenna?
Natasha McKenna is a woman who was arrested. She was mentally ill. She was taken into a prison and detained. She was then killed by several police officers that went into her cell in full sort of hazmat gear. And her last words were, "You said you weren't going to kill me." And there's actually extremely brutal video of the whole encounter of the police approaching her in the cell and holding her down. It's really grisly and hard to watch.
Everyone listen to this for just 1 second here.
You promised that you wouldn't kill me. I didn't do anything.
Watch your legs. Got her legs. Where's the restraints? Let's go. Which ones do you want?
There you go, her last words. You promised you wouldn't kill me. I didn't do anything. And then it's the rapid reaction force thing, just like at Guantanamo Bay, where whenever the cell extraction team, and like you say, they're dressed up in this hazmat gear. It looks like mop gear from Desert Storm in 1991, back when Saddam Hussein actually still did have some chemical weapons that Ronald Reagan had given him. Yeah. And I just imagine any person, but especially someone, a paranoid schizophrenic being, stomped and suffocated and murdered to death by guys dressed up like these monsters out of some paranoid schizophrenic nightmare of some dystopian totalitarian future. It's just crazy. You can't look at that and think of any other thing other than some nightmare out of, the Nazis or a science fiction movie or something.
Yeah, it definitely looks like a dystopian future, and it actually very much feels like it too. As the video goes on, they hold her down, and even though she's just one woman and they have 5 officers holding her down, they proceed to tase her while she's held down, and they tase her 4 times in the video, and that ends up being the cause of death. They call it excited delirium, which is a term that has been proven to be manufactured by Taser, the company that produces these weapons, which they say are non-lethal, but have actually resulted in at least a dozen deaths in custody or during arrest that I've seen this year.
Yeah. And you think about that, too, just right there. Sorry to interrupt, but that would never work on anyone except a court system or a newspaper man that, hey, if you electroshock torture somebody to death, well, there's a millisecond between the tasing and the dying, and so therefore the heart failed. Yep, heart, it just up and failed, and it wasn't the taser that tased that heart to failure. It was the heart's fault. Excited delirium, the maybe could be argued as the reaction to being tased, but is some supposedly degree of separation between the tasing and the dying. I mean, what kind of load of crap is that?
Yeah, and Taser has spent a lot of money doing sort of scientific studies proving that the cause of death is excited delirium, and they actually will hire experts to go into court when officers are being sued or being tried for crimes for killing someone with the taser, and say that argue that it's not the taser that killed them, arguing that it wasn't the fault of the officer that killed them, that it was this invented thing called excited delirium, which did not exist as a diagnosis until the taser, or at least it wasn't widely used. It was used predating the 1920s, and then it disappeared from the vocabulary, and now it's back again and being used really widely in response to taser deaths.
Unbelievable. And seriously, everyone, please go and look at this footage. You can find it on Keegan's Twitter feed. You can find it on my Twitter feed this morning as well, /Scott Horton Show or /Keegan NYC. And it's brutal, but, come on. I mean, actually, I guess you can't actually see her face when they're murdering her or whatever. There's so many people dogpiling on top of her. It's not the most gruesome thing. What's the most shocking about it? We see so many innocent people, especially blacks, murdered by cops. The most shocking thing about it is the costumes of the murderers in this one. We're like, where do these people get off? How do they convince themselves that this is how you attack a woman suffering from paranoid schizophrenia? And what are they doing?
Yeah, it's just baffling as to why they didn't have psychologists come in and talk to her, try to remove her in a peaceful way, and instead decided to gear up. I really feel like it's an extension of the militarization of police forces, even when they're handling our sort of most delicate Americans.
Yeah. Well, now, so these guys are all going on trial, right, for murdering this helpless woman?
No, they're pretty much all being exonerated before any sort of trial. The cause of death was listed as an accident, not even a homicide. They're pretty much getting off on the fact that it was caused by excited delirium and not by them holding her down and tasing her until her heart stopped.
Excited delirium, amazing. Who's Felix Kumi?
I'm unfortunately not in front of a computer. Can you refresh me on the case?
Yeah. He's the innocent bystander in the gun control entrapment scheme there.
Yeah. So this is a case that's been really bothering me. I'm local in New York City, and so the police force that I watch sort of most closely is the NYPD. And so the NYPD was involved in trying to purchase illegal handguns just north of the Bronx, actually, so in Westchester County. And the person that this officer had routinely bought guns from, he was buying them from again. And apparently the person who he had bought guns from got into the back of his car and threatened put a gun, what the officer said was a gun, to his head, and took $1,400 cash from him and then fled from the vehicle. The cop then got out of the car and fired 14 to 20 shots in this small town north of the Bronx, and he hit the perpetrator, who turned out not to even have a real gun. It was a fake gun. And he also shot an innocent bystander, Felix Kumi, 2 times in the chest, killing him. So obviously this is very disturbing use of force from an NYPD officer. There's actually a Supreme Court case that says officers are not allowed to fire at fleeing suspects, that it is a violation of their constitutional rights. And I think this case exemplifies why. You're putting innocent bystanders at risk. You don't know what the actual threats are. If someone's fleeing, there are better ways to handle it. That cop had a radio. There are cops all over. This is New York City.
Yeah.
This could have been dealt with every other way besides shooting and injuring this person who, ends up wasn't guilty of a violent crime, and killing an innocent bystander who had children and grandchildren.
Yeah. The thing is, too, is if they wanted to claim that, I don't think they could really claim this, if they thought he would be a danger to the general public, just because he robbed a cop, undercover cop, who he didn't know was a cop, that doesn't imply that he's, about to go on a mass murder spree of innocent strangers or anything like that. But even if we accepted that argument, and he had to stop him, still, you don't shoot unless you have a clean shot. You don't spray 14 to 20 shots from a handgun down the street in New York City, for Christ's sake. This cop obviously was just throwing a temper tantrum is all.
Yeah, and this it also brings up another point about police accountability in New York right now.
You know what? That's a perfect place to pick up this conversation on the other side. There's very important questions there about accountability, and especially in New York. It's Keegan Stephan at Keegan.nyc. We'll be right back after this. Hey, y'all, Scott Horton here for WallStreetWindow.com. Mike Swanson knows his stuff. He made a killing running his own hedge fund and always gets out of the stock market before the government-generated bubbles pop, which is, by the way, what he's doing right now, selling all his stocks and betting on gold and commodities. Sign up at wallstreetwindow.com and get real-time updates from Mike on all his market moves. It's hard to know how to protect your savings and earn a good return in an economy like this. Mike Swanson can help. Follow along on paper and see for yourself. wallstreetwindow.com. All right, you guys, welcome back to the show. I'm talking with Keegan Stephan about the police state. He's at Keegan.nyc, and you follow him on Twitter, twitter.com/KeeganNYC. Keeping up with police abuse and the Black Lives Matter movement and all that. So now, accountability. You said the magic word when we were going out to break there, and something a little bit different happened in New York recently, where the governor announced that he was going to appoint a guy who somehow there were going to be some independent investigations of at least some police killings. But then it seems like maybe that didn't pan out to be all what it was cracked up to be in the first place. I'm not sure. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, it's really heating up right now. So what happened was that there was a strong push from the Black Lives Matter movement, picking up on police accountability movements from the past that have been asking for a special prosecutor to look into all police killings. So this would, it would pick up these cases in which people are obviously concerned, rightfully, that local DAs who constantly work with the police on all sorts of other cases don't prosecute cases of cops killing people as critically as they could. We've seen non-indictments across the country in cases where, it looks very clear on video that someone is innocently killed by a cop, such as Eric Garner. Governor Cuomo, to his credit, brought this before the legislature and was trying to get a bill passed to create a special prosecutor, it's called, to prosecute all cases where the police kill New Yorkers. Unfortunately, it didn't pass. There was no bill passed, so he signed an executive order saying that the Attorney General would take over all cases where police kill unarmed New Yorkers. So it was a bit of a compromise, only unarmed, and the term unarmed is undefined. But it was very clear on the fact that the AG would have to take over the investigation from local prosecutors anytime a cop kills an unarmed New Yorker. This got tested very quickly when one local prosecutor actually requested that the AG investigate a killing that happened 3 months before the bill was signed. Then we had Cuomo and the AG say that they were not going to investigate this case because the executive order was not grandfathered. It was only going to apply to cases that happened afterward. This was, disappointing, obviously. And then the case we were just talking about, Felix Cumey, the innocent bystander that was killed by an NYPD officer, obviously fits the bill. This innocent bystander was unarmed. A local prosecutor is going to be taking up the case. And, the AG should be taking it up. We should have a special prosecutor who's going to look into it, who doesn't have to work with the NYPD regularly. Unfortunately, the very next day after the shooting, the Attorney General said that he would not be taking over the investigation, sort of mysteriously. And myself and some other people, raised this objection. Why isn't he investigating? This is exactly what he's supposed to be investigating. And then Cuomo made an announcement, sort of inexplicably augmenting his executive order, or disagreeing with his own executive order, saying that they would only be investigating when they thought that there was a conflict of interest. That's extremely disappointing. It seems like
another term without a definition there, or one that's malleable enough to. Yeah.
And I'm going to argue that it'll sort of be used exactly when it shouldn't be used.
Right.
So, what's been happening ever since the executive order was signed is local DAs have been voicing their objections to the executive order, saying that they can handle their own cases, and, you could argue that it's because they want to keep on good terms with their local police. And so anytime there's an objection, it looks like the AG is going to back off and not investigate. And those are the exact cases when he should be investigating, when there probably is a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
So it seems like this is sort of, this has not been, the greatest, move for accountability. We need a much stiffer law. And that is something that we're going to be pushing for this coming legislative session. They're going to have to, or there will probably be a proposal to pass a law that will replace the executive order. And we need to make sure that it is stronger in its language, that it defines all of these terms, such as unarmed, or eliminates that term entirely. and that it mandates that the AG absolutely has to investigate all of these killings and can't pick and choose and let local prosecutors stay on the case when it is a conflict of interest.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the thing. I was even talking with a friend of mine who's a lawyer who works with the state legislature here in Texas. And, my idea was it should be automatic that not necessarily a special prosecutor at the state level, but just, the state government has a system where a county district attorney from another county in the same state, or parish or however it works in whatever commonwealth or whatever state people live in, but basically the same thing. You have from another district, a prosecutor, and it's automatic. And I saw where actually there's kind of I forgot what it's called, the agenda action items that were put out by part of the Black Lives Matter movement, where they called for bringing in the FBI to investigate each one of these the way they do now when it's a suspected civil rights violation. And that seemed to me like the very kind of worst way to solve this. And the FBI, these are the worst people in the whole wide world. You don't want them. What you want, though, is, like you're saying, a DA, a prosecutor, because, hey, murder is a state crime. That's not a federal issue. It is a state issue, but there's this huge conflict of interest. And, of course, all you got to do is you just create a random lottery of state district attorneys' offices, and then, that district attorney has to appoint one of his assistant DAs to go and run the investigation. And then maybe, you'd have to work out the details with the cops. But anyway, the point of my story is, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get to it, but I'm taking too long. My friend, the lawyer that works with the state legislature, says, we do stuff like this all the time. We have separate outside jurisdiction type investigations all the time. The Travis County government here in Texas has a special unit that's just for state level political corruption because the state government is in Travis County. So, and then he compared it to that and a few other things. So this is totally doable. All we got to do is have our eye on the ball about what exactly the plan is. And asking the Justice Department to come and help is not the solution. First we count how many black people were burned to death at Waco, and then we get back to asking the FBI for help.
Yeah. I think what we've learned here in New York is that there's not only a conflict of interest when you have a local prosecutor looking into the police department they have to work with every day. You also have a conflict of interest every time you involve the political structure. So we really need to find a special prosecutor that is divorced from the political structure. So having the Attorney General, the state Attorney General, do it here is this political hotbed. All politicians, they don't want to go against the police union. They don't want the police union upset about them. So they're also not doing the best job. And it was never the intent of the Black Lives Matter movement or the civil rights movement before them here in New York, to have the AG be the special prosecutor. They wanted someone who was divorced from the political process. So when we're looking at this bill that might get drafted in the next legislative session, we also need to find out who that special prosecutor is and find out systems in which they can be divorced from the political system as well as the police department that they're investigating.
Yeah, man, we need to get also, and it would have to differ state by state, but the lawyers really could work this out and get some real model legislation written for all 50 states that here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to solve it. And no well-meaning person on the other side could really object. I mean, it's not like cops everywhere have a real reason to mistrust the DAs from the next county over, do they? If they're not, doing anything wrong, what do they have to worry about? But it'll make us feel better.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think there's no ends to what police unions will object to at this point. They've been objecting to every other level of accountability so far.
Yeah. All right. And now, so I'm sorry, in a couple minutes here, I want to kind of get back to the list here a little bit. I'm glad we talked about that though, because that's the most important part of this is, the actual accountability and all that. But can you tell us about, some more of these people who were killed by the cops? I got this whole list here. From going down your Twitter feed. It's hard to keep track of them. Well, tell me about the two skaters that got shot by a cop. We're supposed to believe they were trying to beat him to death with their skateboards in Olympia, Washington. Is that it?
Yeah. It's called the Olympia shooting. If you want to learn more about it, you can definitely get a lot of information by searching the hashtag Olympia shooting. And yeah, it happened in Washington. Two black stepbrothers, allegedly stole beer from a store. They actually left it there and then were, leaving, apparently going home, but a police officer pulled over seeing them and on the side of a highway, engaged them and shot them both. And the cop says that they were threatening him with a skateboard. There is no accusation that they made any contact with him with the skateboard, and yet he shot them, both of them. And the DA announced last week, I believe it was, that he was not going to press any charges against the officer for shooting them. No excessive force charge, no reckless endangerment charge, nothing. But that he was going to charge both of the brothers for assault with a deadly weapon. And he argued that the skateboard was a deadly weapon. So, obviously double standard of justice there, it feels like.
Well, at least they're still alive, so that I guess eventually they'll be able to tell their side of the story. Something tells me it's not going to sound too much like what the cops are saying here. All right, listen, I'm sorry we're out of time. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I hope we can do this again soon, Keegan.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, y'all. That is Keegan Stephan. He's at Keegan.nyc, and follow him on Twitter /KeeganNYC.
I love Bitcoin, but there's just something incredibly satisfying about having real, fine silver in your pocket. That's why commodity discs are so neat. They're 1-ounce rounds of fine silver with a QR code on the back. Just grab your smartphone's QR reader, scan the coin, and you'll instantly get the silver spot price in Federal Reserve notes and Bitcoin. And if you donate $100 to the Scott Horton Show, he'll send you one. Learn more at facebook.com/commoditydiscs. commoditydiscs.com.
Hey, y'all, Scott here for Samurai Tech Academy at mastersamuraitech.com. Modern appliance repair requires true technicians who can troubleshoot their high-tech electronics. If you're young and looking to make some real money, or you've been at it a while and just need to keep your skills up to date, Samurai Tech Academy teaches it all. And they'll also show you the business, how to own and run your own. Take a free sample course to see how easily you can learn appliance repair from mastersamuraitech.com. Use coupon code Scott Horton for 10% off any course or set of courses at mastersamuraitech.com. Hey, I'll check out the audiobook of Lou Rockwell's Fascism versus Capitalism, narrated by me, Scott Horton, at audible.com. It's a great collection of his essays and speeches on the important tradition of liberty. From medieval history to the Ron Paul Revolution, Rockwell blasts our statist enemies, profiles our greatest libertarian heroes, and prescribes the path forward in the battle against Leviathan. Fascism versus Capitalism by Lou Rockwell for audiobook. Find it at Audible, Amazon, iTunes, or just click in the right margin of my website at scotthorton.org.